The Korvosh commander chittered something that the translator rendered as defiance, but the effect was undermined by the nervous twitching of his secondary limbs. Back at the table, plans for the final offensive were taking shape. Human tactical. Creativity combined with alien insider knowledge had produced a strategy that would have been impossible for either group alone. The Korvosh never imagined we would work together, observed Elena Reyes. Their entire empire was built on keeping subjugated species isolated from each other. They cannot comprehend cooperation between equals, agreed Talvek. In their society, relationships exist only as domination or submission. Dr. Okafor, who had been studying the combined biological and technological data from the allied species, looked up from her tablet. That's why they'll ultimately fail. Their rigid hierarchy makes them predictable. They can't adapt quickly enough to changing circumstances. The alliance meeting continued long into the night. Supply chains were coordinated, fleet movements synchronized, and intelligence shared freely. What emerged wasn't just a military coalition, but the foundation for something entirely new in this region of space, a community of diverse civilizations, united by mutual respect rather than force. As the meeting concluded, Admiral Chen stood to address the gathered representatives. When the Korvosh attacked Earth, they thought they were simply conquering another isolated world. They had no idea they were creating the very thing that would destroy their empire, a bridge between previously disconnected peoples. Talvek raised a ceremonial cup in the human tradition they had recently learned. To unlikely friends, the Novali said, and the beginning of a new era. Around the table, representatives of 7 formerly enslaved species and their human allies raised their cups. Even the Korvosh prisoner in the corner seemed to understand that he was witnessing not just the end of an empire, but the birth of something that would reshape the galaxy. The alliance that began as a necessity of war was becoming something more, a vision for a future where diversity was strength and cooperation replaced conquest. You attacked us. Cute. Now observe this. The great hall of the Korvosh Imperial Palace had never been designed for the ceremony now taking place within its walls. Massive columns of black stone rose toward a vaulted ceiling where constellations of conquered worlds once glittered proudly. Now those same stars shone with different colors, representing liberated planets and new alliances. Supreme Commander Jarak, once the most feared military leader in 3 sectors of the galaxy, stood alone at the center of the hall. His ceremonial armor, dulled from lack of care, hung loosely on his frame. The past year had aged him visibly, his exoskeleton showing stress fractures, his compound eyes having lost their bright metallic gleam. "The human delegation approaches," announced a young Korvosh aide, one of the few who had remained loyal through the collapse. The doors swung open, revealing a procession, unlike any the palace had ever seen. Representatives from 17 formerly enslaved species entered first, walking freely, where once they would have been brought in chains. Behind them came the humans, dressed in formal Earth Defense Fleet uniforms. Jarak's mandibles clicked, in recognition, as he spotted Captain Elena Reyes at the head of the human contingent. He remembered reviewing footage of her ship near the first colony they had attacked. She had been the first human to witness Korvosh power, and now she was here to formalize their surrender. The bitter symmetry was not lost on him. "Supreme Commander," Elena said, her voice carrying across the hushed hall, "I bring greetings from Earth and the allied worlds." Jarak performed the traditional Korvosh greeting, though the gesture felt hollow now. "Captain Reyes, you have the surrender documents?" Elena nodded, but didn't immediately produce them. Instead, she looked around the hall, taking in the ancient symbols of Korvosh conquest carved into the walls. "1 year ago, your fleet appeared above our colonies without warning. You gave us an ultimatum, submit or perish." The Supreme Commander's posture stiffened. "And now you have come to give us the same choice." "No," Elena said, surprising him. "We've come to offer something different." She gestured, and an aide brought forward not the expected surrender document, but a different kind of treaty. As it was displayed on the holographic projector at the center of the hall, Jarak's compound eyes widened in disbelief. "This is a peace treaty, with conditions for the Korvosh to join your alliance?" Elena nodded. The Terran Cooperative, a union of independent worlds, including what remains of the Korvosh territories. Confusion rippled through the remaining Korvosh officials gathered at the edges of the hall. After a year of devastating defeats, the collapse of their empire and revolutions on dozens of their worlds, they had expected punishment, perhaps even extinction. "I don't understand," Jarak said finally. "We attacked your worlds, destroyed your colonies, killed millions of your people. By all rights, you should annihilate us in retribution." For the first time, Elena smiled slightly. "Because that's what you would do. We're showing you something different." She moved closer, speaking so that only Jarak could hear. "Do you know what truly defeated you? Not just our weapons or technology or tactics, though those helped. What defeated you was that you couldn't imagine a different way of relating to other species. You saw the galaxy as predators and prey, conquerors and subjects. Around them, human diplomats were mingling with representatives of the former slave species and the remaining Korvosh officials, exchanging ideas and, remarkably, finding common ground. Your civilization is ancient," Elena continued. "You've accomplished incredible things, but you stagnated because you couldn't learn from others you deemed inferior. That ends today." The formal signing took place an hour later, as Supreme Commander Jarak pressed his identifier to the document, officially ending over 2,000 years of Korvosh imperial rule. He found himself asking the question that had haunted him since the tide of war turned. "Captain Reyes," he said, his translator struggling to convey the complex emotions in his voice, "when did you know you would win? When did you realize we had made a fatal mistake in attacking Earth?" Elena considered the question carefully. "I think it was when we recovered the first pieces of your technology from our destroyed colonies," she said finally. "Our scientists looked at it and didn't say this is impossible or we're doomed. Instead, they asked, how can we make this better?" She gestured to Dr. Okafor, who was deep in conversation with a Korvosh engineer, already discussing ways to adapt quantum displacement shields for peaceful applications. "That's the difference you never understood about humans," Elena explained. "We've spent our entire evolutionary history adapting, improvising, overcoming. Where you saw limitations, we saw challenges. Where you sought to dominate, we sought to connect." As the ceremony concluded, the assembled beings moved to the palace's great balcony overlooking the Korvosh capital city. Ships from dozens of worlds filled the sky, not in a show of force but in celebration of a new beginning. "The Terran Cooperative," announced Elena to the gathered diplomats, "is founded on a simple principle: strength through diversity, progress through cooperation." Jarak, standing at the edge of the group, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "And what of those who might threaten this new alliance? There are other empires beyond your current reach." Elena's expression grew serious. "Then they would do well to learn from your example, Commander. The galaxy now knows a simple truth: never attack a species that turns survival itself into an art form." As the celebrations continued into the night, news of the treaty spread across the stars. The age of the Korvosh Empire had ended, and something new had begun. Not through annihilation, but through transformation, the human way. "They value victory over survival," one Korvosh commander reported shakily. "How do you defeat an enemy that doesn't fear death?" The human historical footage continued playing throughout the alien fleet, now supplemented with real-time battle recordings showing human ships executing maneuvers that Korvosh tactical computers classified as irrational or excessively high risk. By the fourth week of the counteroffensive, Korvosh morale had plummeted. Their carefully structured military hierarchy, designed for conquering predictable opponents, began to crack under the pressure of human unpredictability. In his war room, on Earth, Admiral Chen studied the shifting tactical displays with grim satisfaction. "They expected us to fight by their rules," he told his officers. "That was their first mistake." "You attacked us?" Cute. Now observe this. The Korvosh Conquest Council chamber had never been so silent. 7 ancient leaders, veterans of countless, successful campaigns across the galaxy, sat motionless as they processed the unthinkable reports appearing on their displays. The holographic star map at the center of the room told a story none of them had ever expected to see. Red markers showing Korvosh territories blinking out one after another. Outpost Station K9 has fallen, announced the automated system. Colony World Trava Mao is no longer responding. Defense Fleet 7 reports critical damage and is retreating from the Procyon sector. Elder Kravner, oldest of the council members, finally broke the silence. How can this be happening? These humans were nothing, a single planet species with primitive technology. They've adapted, said Supreme Commander Jarak, his once confident voice now hollow. And not just adapted. They're evolving their tactics faster than we can respond. The latest battle footage played above the star map. Human ships, now incorporating technologies from multiple species, engaged Korvosh vessels with devastating efficiency. But most disturbing was what came after the battles, scenes from worlds the Korvosh had conquered years or even decades earlier. On Novali Prime, human soldiers helped the bird-like Novali tear down processing centers and slave barracks. On Trell, the amphibious locals welcomed human medical teams, treating injuries and illnesses the Korvosh had never bothered to address. Species that had lived under the Imperium's boot for generations were rising up, inspired by the human example. They're not just fighting us, Elder Vexer observed, mandibles trembling. They're freeing our subjects, building alliances. A new alert flashed across the displays. Human diplomatic transmission incoming, announced the system. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. Never before had they accepted communication from a species under conquest. To do so would imply equality. Yet their situation had become desperate enough that Kravner nodded authorization. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen, flanked by representatives from 3 other species, a Novali, a Trell, and a silicon-based being the Council recognized as a Lithian. "Greetings, Korvosh Council," Chen said, his tone professional but cold. "I'm here to discuss terms for your unconditional surrender." "Surrender?" Jarak sputtered. "The Korvosh Imperium has never surrendered." "Then I suggest you start learning." "How?" Chen replied. "You've lost 23 major battle groups in the past month. 6 of your colony worlds have declared independence. Your supply lines are shattered." The council couldn't deny these facts, but Elder Kravner leaned forward, still defiant. "How?" he demanded. "How did you advance so quickly? Our intelligence indicated you were centuries behind us technologically. You had never even left your own solar system in significant numbers." For the first time, Chen's stern expression softened slightly. "Your intelligence wasn't wrong, Elder, but you made a fundamental error in your assessment of our species." The Novali representative stepped forward. "They understand something you never have," she said, her feathers rustling. "The Korvosh see other species as resources to be used or obstacles to be removed. Humans see potential allies." Chen nodded. "While you were busy building weapons, we were building relationships. When we found your former slaves, we didn't see workers. We saw partners with valuable knowledge about your weaknesses." On the star map, another Korvosh stronghold winked out as human-led forces overran it. "But there's something else," said the Lithian in its rumbling voice. "Something fundamental about humans that the Korvosh failed to understand." A new hologram appeared, a scientific analysis of human evolutionary history. It showed primitive humans on the savannas of Africa, pursuing prey over long distances until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. Unlike most sentient species, humans didn't evolve primarily through cooperation like the Novali, or specialized adaptation like yourselves, Chen explained. "We evolved as persistence predators. We're not the strongest or fastest, but we simply don't stop." The council watched in growing horror as the presentation continued, showing how this evolutionary trait manifested throughout human history. Their ability to endure hardship, to recover from setbacks, to pursue goals with relentless determination. "When you attacked our colonies," Chen continued, "you awakened something primal in us. You became our prey. And humans never stop hunting until we're done." Elder Kravner slumped in his seat, finally understanding. "We could have chosen any species in this sector," he said quietly. "Any other world. But we chose yours. Chen's expression hardened again. Yes. And that was your final mistake. Outside the council chamber, reports continued to arrive of human-led forces advancing across Corvosh space. Not just fighting, but rebuilding. Not just conquering, but liberating. The Imperium that had seemed invincible for centuries was collapsing not just from military defeat, but from something far more powerful, hope spreading among the oppressed, Tsai. Corvosh had never encountered anything like humanity before. A species that once threatened would cross the galaxy not just to survive, but to ensure such a threat could never rise again. You attacked us. Cute. Now observe this. The Great Hall of the former Corvosh command base on Navali Prime had been transformed. Where once stood the throne-like seat of the alien governor, now stretched a circular table. Around it sat beings from worlds spanning 3 sectors of the galaxy, species that until recently had known each other only as fellow slaves under Corvosh rule. Admiral Chen entered the hall flanked by Captain Elena Reyes and Dr. Amara Okafor. The assembled aliens rose in a gesture of respect that would have been punishable by death just months ago. "Please be seated," Chen said, taking his place at the table. "We have much to discuss." The alliance was unlike anything previously seen in this part of the galaxy. 7 distinct species, each with their own biology, culture, and history, united by a common experience of Corvosh oppression and a shared ally in humanity. Talvek, a towering blue-skinned Novali whose feathered crest rippled with emotion, spread a holographic map across the table. "With the intelligence we've provided, your forces can bypass these defensive clusters entirely," he explained, highlighting routes through Corvosh space. These passages were kept secret, even from most of their own military. "And the shipyards, at Corvus II, remain vulnerable," added Sheila, a small reptilian trell whose people had managed the Corvosh supply networks for generations. "Their construction protocols require exact timing. Disrupt that, and their entire production cycle collapses." Chen nodded, making notes as the representatives shared centuries of accumulated knowledge about their former oppressors. Information that would have been impossible for humans to gather on their own flowed freely from allies eager to contribute to the Corvosh downfall. "Your input has been invaluable," Chen acknowledged. "But I must ask, why did none of you resist? Before, with this knowledge, surely you could have—" "You don't understand," interrupted Morskal, an insectoid being whose crystalline exoskeleton glittered under the lights. "We did resist, all of us, for generations." Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. "The Lithians fought for 80 years, Sheila explained. The Novali rebellion lasted nearly a century, but the Corvosh always prevailed through sheer technological superiority and ruthless determination. What changed, asked Talvek, was you, humans." A silence fell over the room as the allied species regarded the 3 humans with a mixture of awe and curiosity. "You did in months what we could not achieve in centuries," said Drala, a gaseous entity who communicated through a translation device. "Not just fighting the Corvosh, but understanding their technology, improving upon it, finding weaknesses we never saw." In the corner of the hall, a captured Corvosh commander sat under guard, mandibles twitching as he listened to the Gi proceedings. The once proud officer had been brought to witness the alliance firsthand, part of a strategy to break the remaining Corvosh resistance by demonstrating the futility of continued fighting. Morskal approached the prisoner, compound eyes reflecting the alien's face. "You chose the wrong enemy," the insectoid said, voice clicking through the translator. "You attacked a species that spent its evolutionary history chasing prey until it died of exhaustion. They were just getting started when you decided to retreat." "Power coupling stable at 97%, called out Dr. Yoshida from his monitoring station. "Quantum alignment holding steady." Amara nodded, making final adjustments to the central control unit, a hybrid of human ingenuity and alien technology. "Begin final diagnostic sequence," she ordered. What they had created in this underground lab was theoretically impossible, at least according to the fragments of Corvosh scientific data they'd recovered. The aliens had dismissed this avenue of research centuries ago, deeming it a dead end. But humans had approached the problem differently. The Korvosh think linearly, Amara had explained to world leaders just days earlier. They build on what works, refining and perfecting established technologies, but they rarely question their fundamental assumptions. Now those differences in thinking were about to be put to the ultimate test. The first prototype quantum displacement shield was ready for deployment on the defense station orbiting Earth. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen. Dr. Okafor, our sensors show a new Korvosh battle group approaching. Their main weapon is powering up, the same energy cannon that destroyed New Terra Colony. Our conventional defenses won't hold against it. Amara took a deep breath. We're ready, Admiral. Initiating transfer now. Around the room, scientists and engineers held their breath as the quantum displacement technology was beamed to the orbital platform. If it worked, it would create a revolutionary defensive field, one that didn't just block energy attacks but shifted them into a parallel quantum state. On the Korvosh command ship, final preparations for the assault on Earth were underway. Their new tactic was simple: bypass the surprisingly effective human defensive fleet and target Earth directly with their planet-killer weapon, a massive energy cannon that could crack a world's crust. Target locked, the weapons officer reported. Planetary defense grid is within range. Jarak raised his primary limb, fire. The massive cannon discharged, sending a blinding beam of destructive energy toward Earth's main orbital defense station. By all logic, the human installation should have been vaporized instantly. Instead, something extraordinary happened. As the beam struck the station, a shimmering field of blue-white energy appeared around it. Rather than exploding, the station seemed to blur slightly, as if becoming partially transparent. The devastating energy beam passed through it without causing damage, dissipating harmlessly into space beyond. On the defense station, cheers erupted as systems remained operational. "It worked," shouted the commander. "The quantum displacement. Shield is holding." Below in the laboratory, Amara and her team watched the telemetry with wide eyes. "It's actually working better than our models predicted," she whispered, tears of exhaustion and joy running down her face. The Korvosh weapons officer stared at his readings in confusion. "Supreme Commander, the beam. It passed through their station without effect. This defies all known physics." Jarak's compound eyes widened. "Fire again, maximum power." 3 more times the planet-killer weapon discharged. 3 more times the quantum displacement shield caused the energy to pass harmlessly through the station, shifting it briefly into another quantum state. Word spread quickly through the Korvosh fleet. Their ultimate weapon, the technological advantage that had brought 17 civilizations to their knees, was useless against these humans. For the first time in the long history of the Korvosh Imperium, confusion gave way to something unfamiliar. In their ranks, fear. "You attacked us." Cute. Now observe this. The Korvosh battle cruiser. Relentless victory drifted silently through the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Like all Korvosh vessels, it followed strict protocol, systematic scanning patterns, regular status reports, and adherence to the battle plans set by High Command, which is why Bridge Officer Kruvak was confused when the ship's communication system suddenly activated without authorization. "Technology Division, explain this malfunction," he demanded, clicking his mandibles in irritation. Before anyone could respond, the main view screen flickered. Instead of tactical data, it displayed unfamiliar imagery. Humans in primitive battle, gear charging across an open field. "What is this?" the ship's commander barked. "Shut it down!" But the transmission continued, now showing humans in trenches, surrounded by mud and barbed wire. The footage was grainy, black and white, clearly historical. The humans fought with crude weapons, metal tubes that launched small projectiles, bladed instruments attached to the ends of these tubes. "I can't terminate it, Commander," the technology officer reported. "They've bypassed our primary systems." Throughout the ship, on every screen and communication device, the same images played. The footage jumped forward in time. Humans now, in different uniforms, different battlefields, but always fighting with the same ferocity. "This must be propaganda," the commander said, but uncertainty edged his voice. "Some sort of psychological tactic." The historical montage continued, showing conflicts from throughout human history: World War II, Vietnam, modern urban warfare. The Korvosh crew watched, increasingly disturbed, as humans employed tactics that seemed unnecessarily brutal, risky, or simply chaotic by their standards. These are recordings of humans fighting other humans, the intelligence officer realized, his voice dropping to a whisper. This is how they treat their own species. The implications hung in the air. If humans fought each other with such determination and savagery, what would they do against an external threat? Similar scenes played out across the Korvosh fleet as the hacked transmissions spread from ship to ship. On some vessels, the footage included narration in perfect Korvosh language, describing human concepts like unconventional warfare, scorched earth tactics, and fighting to the last man. In the command center of Earth's Cyber Operations Division, Lieutenant Priya Sharma monitored the hack's progress with quiet satisfaction. Her team had worked day and night to crack the alien communication protocols. They're watching, she confirmed, turning to Admiral Chen. All major vessels in the fleet are receiving our transmission. Chen nodded grimly. Good. Let's make sure they understand exactly who they're dealing with. The hack wasn't just a show of technical prowess. It was carefully crafted, psychological warfare. The Korvosh they had learned from captured data were methodical fighters who valued order and predictability. Their society emphasized hierarchy and clear chains of command. Their military victories came from overwhelming force applied according to established doctrine. Humans were different. Throughout history, humans had excelled at adaptation, improvisation, and sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. On the Korvosh command ship, Supreme Commander Jarak watched with growing concern as his fleet's cohesion deteriorated. Ships reported human attacks using tactics that defied their battle computers' predictions. Small human vessels would charge directly at much larger Korvosh ships, a suicidal approach by all logical standards, only to veer away at the last moment, leaving behind explosive devices or electronic warfare packages. They're not following any recognizable doctrine, his tactical officer complained. How can we predict their movements when they don't adhere to rational battle principles? The situation worsened when human fighters began targeting communication relays rather than weapons systems. Instead of disabling Korvosh ships, they isolated them, cutting them off from the fleet command structure. The aliens, dependent on centralized direction, found themselves paralyzed without clear orders. Most disturbing of all was the human willingness to sacrifice. When a critical Korvosh supply depot near Mars came under attack, the defenders watched in horror as damaged. Human ships deliberately crashed into key targets, their pilots remaining aboard until impact. 3 years as an emergency responder on Titan, Hana replied, her voice still shaky from what she'd witnessed. Perfect. We need you in Medical Bay 4. They're adapting colony life support systems for our capital ships. Hana had expected refugee camps, not immediate integration. Don't you need to process me first? The officer looked up briefly. Everyone works. Everyone fights. There's no time for paperwork. This scene repeated thousands of times daily as survivors brought not just their bodies but their skills and knowledge back to Earth. Colony engineers understood deep space systems. Frontier settlers knew improvisation and resource management. Their experience was immediately put to use. In labs across the globe, scientists worked around the clock. Dr. Victor Okonkwo hadn't slept in 36 hours as he led the team analyzing recovered Korvosh technology from a damaged fighter that had been shot down over what remained of New Terra colony. Their materials are advanced, he told his team as they gathered for a brief update, but their thinking is linear. They improve what works. Rather than innovate, that's our advantage. He pointed to the alien metal alloy they'd been studying. They've perfected this over centuries, but they're still using principles we discarded decades ago. We approach problems differently. The most surprising development wasn't the technology or the unified response. It was the psychological shift. Psychologists monitoring global communications noted the absence of widespread panic. Instead, a cold, focused anger had spread across humanity. On the Korvosh command ship, intelligence officers monitored intercepted human broadcasts, struggling to understand what they were seeing. "They should be surrendering," Subcommander Vertak said, watching feeds from Earth's news networks. "Their outer defenses are falling. We've demonstrated our superiority. Why are they mobilizing civilians?" "Their communications contain an unusual phrase," another officer noted. "It appears across multiple languages and contexts. They keep saying they only get one free shot." Vertak's translator struggled with the idiom. "What does this mean? They acknowledge we struck first successfully." "Unknown," the intelligence officer replied. "But whatever it means, they seem to find it motivating." On Earth, the phrase had become a rallying cry, painted on the sides of repurposed vehicles, printed on the temporary badges of new military recruits, shared in social media posts and official communications alike. Simple words carrying a simple message. The Korvosh advantage ended with their surprise attack. What came next would be humanity's response. Remember to cite sources when you use information from web searches. "You attacked us. Cute. Now observe this: the Korvosh battle fleet moved with arrogant confidence toward Earth's moon. Their massive ships cast long shadows across the lunar surface as they prepared to establish their forward command base. According to their battle doctrine, this was simply the next logical step in their conquest. Secure a nearby position, build up forces, then launch the final assault on the main planet." Commander Tevlok stood on the bridge of the lead destroyer, watching the pale blue Earth hanging in the distance. "Status report," he ordered. "No significant resistance detected," his second replied. "Their orbital defenses remain concentrated around the planet. The moon is virtually unprotected." Tevlok made a clicking sound of satisfaction. "Exactly as predicted. Begin landing procedures for the construction teams." The first wave of Korvosh ships descended toward the lunar surface. Their sensors showed only a handful of human outposts, scientific bases and mining operations, nothing military. Easy targets. That's when everything changed. Deep in the shadowed craters of the moon's far side, hidden doors slid open in the lunar regolith. From these concealed hangars, ships emerged, human vessels unlike any the Korvosh had encountered before. They were smaller than the alien warships, but moved with startling speed and agility. Most disturbing of all, they barely registered on Korvosh sensors until they were already firing. On the bridge of the EDF Chimera, Lieutenant Raj Patel watched his targeting display light up. "All ships, weapons free," he ordered. "Remember, your training, hit and move." The human vessels struck from multiple directions simultaneously. Their hulls, coated with materials recovered from the wreckage at the colonies, absorbed most scanning frequencies. Their weapons, a hybrid of human ingenuity and reverse-engineered alien technology, cut through Korvosh shields with unexpected effectiveness. Aboard the Korvosh command ship, alarms blared. "Where did they come from?" Tevlok demanded, as his view screen showed 3 of his escort vessels already crippled, venting atmosphere into space. "Unknown, Commander. They're using some form of stealth technology. Our sensors can't get a lock." Tevlok slammed his primary limbs against the control panel. "Impossible. Their technology was primitive. We assessed their capabilities thoroughly." But the evidence was exploding all around him. Human vessels appeared seemingly from nowhere, fired with deadly precision, then vanished again before Korvosh. Targeting systems could respond. The carefully ordered Korvosh formation dissolved into chaos. Back on Earth, in the underground command center, Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold via satellite feed. Beside him, Dr. Hassan monitored the performance of their new weapon systems. "The phase-shift cannons are exceeding expectations," she reported. "The Korvosh shields can't adapt quickly enough." Chen nodded, his expression grim but satisfied. "And our own shields, holding at 87% efficiency against their weapons. The polarizing frequency we discovered from the debris was correct. Their energy weapons are powerful, but predictable. The most effective human ships were the smallest, fast. Attack vessels crewed by pilots from Earth's various special forces. They darted between the massive Korvosh warships, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. Captain Nadia Volkov's squadron led the most daring assault, diving directly into the heart of the alien formation. Her voice crackled over the comm system. Wolfpack, follow my lead. We're going for their command communications array. 6 human fighters accelerated toward the largest Korvosh vessel, weaving through defensive fire. 2 were hit and spun away, but the remaining 4 launched their payloads directly into the towering communications spire that coordinated the alien fleet's movements. The explosion rippled across the massive ship, not destroying it, but severing its ability to direct the battle. Without central coordination, the disciplined Korvosh attack faltered. Hour by hour, the tide turned. Korvosh ships, designed for overwhelming force against inferior opponents, proved surprisingly vulnerable to asymmetric tactics. Their commanders, accustomed to enemies who followed predictable patterns, struggled to counter the seemingly chaotic human assault. By the time the first hour ended, 30 Korvosh vessels, including 3 of their prized heavy destroyers, drifted, dead in space, or had been forced to retreat. On the lunar surface, Chinese, American, and European troops secured the few ships that had managed to land, capturing the first live Korvosh prisoners of the war. The aliens, seeing humans up close for the first time, seemed genuinely shocked by the ferocity of these physically smaller beings. They looked confused, one soldier commented, as they escorted the captured aliens to a secure facility. Wouldn't you be? His companion replied. They thought they were hunting prey. Turns out they were poking a hornet's nest. You attacked us? Cute. Now observe this. Supreme Commander Jarak stared at the battle footage in disbelief. The sleek black material covering the human ships shouldn't exist. The weapons they fired violated principles of physics that the Korvosh had established centuries ago. Most disturbing of all was the speed at which these changes had appeared. This is impossible, he hissed, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. These modifications couldn't have been developed in 3 weeks. The humans had no access to our technology before the first attack. His science advisor, trembling slightly, displayed the analysis. The evidence is clear, Supreme Commander. They've not only reverse-engineered components from our damaged vessels, but improved upon them. The word improved hung in the air like a blasphemy. In 17 conquests across the galaxy, no species had ever taken Korvosh technology and made it better. How? Jarak demanded. Their scientific understanding was at least 2 centuries behind our own. Meanwhile, in a hardened laboratory beneath what had once been a physics research facility in Kenya, Dr. Amara Okafor hadn't slept in nearly 4 days. Dark circles rimmed her eyes, but excitement kept her moving. Around her, a team of 50 engineers and scientists from 23 countries worked with singular focus. You attacked us? Cute. Now observe this. Captain Elena Reyes stood at the command center of the EDF Dauntless, her eyes fixed on the massive display screen that showed the unfolding disaster. What had begun as a routine patrol shift had turned into humanity's worst nightmare. Confirm those readings, she ordered, her voice steady despite the cold fear spreading through her chest. The young officer at the scanner station looked up with wide eyes. Confirmed, Captain. We're tracking over 200 unknown vessels that just appeared near Titan Colony. They're opening fire. The command center fell silent as the horrifying images came through. Massive ships with sharp, angular designs, unlike anything in human records, emerged from points of light that tore open the blackness of space. Their weapons, brilliant. Beams of energy that burned with an eerie purple glow, cut through Titan Colony's defenses like they were made of paper. Get me Earth Command now, Elena snapped, gripping the railing so hard her knuckles turned white. And send warnings to Proxima and New Terra immediately. But it was already too late for warnings. The feed from Titan Colony went dark mid-transmission, the last images showing massive structures collapsing and the colony's atmosphere venting into space. Before they could process what they'd witnessed, reports flooded in from Proxima Colony. The same scenario playing out again. They're moving faster than our communications, said Commander Patel, Elena's second in command. It's like they knew exactly where to hit us. Within 6 hours, 3 human colony worlds, Titan, Proxima, and New Terra, had gone silent. Nearly 30 million human lives snuffed out before Earth's military vessels could even reach the attack sites. When the first message came through, it was broadcast on all frequencies, translated somehow into perfect English. To the leadership of Earth and its territories, your resistance is unnecessary, your technology is primitive, your species is weak. Submit to the authority of the Korvosh, Imperium or face extinction. You have 48 Earth hours to surrender unconditionally. The message played on repeat as emergency meetings convened across Earth. In the United Nations Security Council chamber, Admiral Lee showed the first captured images of the attackers, tall insectoid beings with forearms and exoskeletons that seemed to shimmer with an internal light. Our intelligence division has already pieced together some information, the Admiral explained to the stunned representatives. They call themselves the Korvosh. From what we can gather from the data packets accompanying their transmission, they're extremely proud of their conquest record. They've apparently subjugated 17 other spacefaring civilizations before encountering us. Elena watched the broadcast from her ship, now rushing back to defend Earth. On her screen, she could see the faces of Earth's leaders grow pale as they viewed footage of the devastation. The colonies never had a chance, she whispered, a knot forming in her throat as she thought of the families, the children who had been living peaceful lives just hours ago. When her communications officer called her name, she turned to see another incoming transmission, this one from a deep space. Listening post that had picked up Korvosh communications. Captain, you need to hear this, the officer said. They're discussing humans. They're saying this will be their easiest conquest yet. You attacked us. Cute. Now observe this. Supreme Commander Jarak walked slowly around the three-dimensional projection of Earth and its defensive capabilities. His four upper limbs moved in perfect harmony, manipulating the holographic display to zoom in on various military installations. The blue light reflected off his armored exoskeleton as the other Korvosh leaders watched in silence. As you can. See? Jarak said, his translator converting his clicking speech into the formal language of the Council. These humans are remarkably unprepared for our arrival. The Grand Hall of Conquest aboard the Korvosh mothership was designed to intimidate, with its high ceilings adorned with trophies from conquered worlds. The Council members, 7 of the oldest and most respected military leaders of their species, sat in a semicircle, their compound eyes evaluating the information before them. Their outer colonies fell quickly, Jarak continued, displaying footage of the burning settlements. Their weapons could barely damage our smallest vessels. Their shields collapsed under minimal bombardment. Council Elder Vexer leaned forward. Yet they haven't surrendered. Our deadline passed 6 hours ago. Jarak made a dismissive gesture with his lower right limb. Pride, nothing more. I've studied their physiology. Soft-bodied creatures with no natural armor, limited strength, poor sensory capabilities. They compensate with crude mechanical technology, but nothing we haven't seen before. He pulled up new images showing Earth's military response, ships mobilizing, defensive positions being established around the planet. They're gathering what forces they have. A pointless gesture. Their strongest weapons would barely penetrate our secondary shields. Their fastest ships are too slow to outmaneuver our fighters. Their attempts at electronic warfare are primitive. The eldest council member clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. You seem very confident, Commander. With good reason, Elder, Jarak replied. I predict total victory within 1 lunar cycle, what they call a month. They will fall faster than the Novali, perhaps even faster than the Trell. I've already selected which continents will serve as our first processing centers. Meanwhile, on Earth, a very different meeting was taking place. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility unknown to the public, Admiral Wei Chen stood before the Emergency Response Committee, 12 people representing Earth's most powerful nations. Ladies and gentlemen, Chen said, his voice echoing in the bunker, I've authorized the activation of Protocol Omega. The room fell silent. Protocol Omega was created after the first confirmed detection of alien life 2 decades ago, a contingency, plan so extreme that many hoped it would never be implemented. Is that necessary? Asked the representative from Europe, her face pale in the harsh lighting. Chen nodded grimly. They attacked without warning. No attempts at communication, no demands before violence. They destroyed 3 colonies in hours, millions. Dead, He paused, letting the horror sink in. But there's something else you need to understand, something worse. He pulled up images captured from intercepted Corvash transmissions. They've done this before, 17 times by our count. They're conquerors, methodical and ruthless. But they've made one critical mistake. Chen zoomed in on translated Corvash battle assessments. Look here, they think we're weak. They're comparing us to the other species they've encountered. They expect us to behave like their previous victims. He straightened his shoulders, looking each committee member in the eye. They haven't encountered humans before. They don't understand what happens when you back us into a corner. The room was quiet for a moment before the Chinese representative spoke up. What exactly does Protocol Omega involve, Admiral? Everything, Chen replied. Every secret project, every experimental weapon, every classified technology we've been developing. We're going to show these aliens exactly what humans are capable of when our survival is threatened. You attacked us? Cute. Now observe this. The skies above Earth filled with ships, not the dreaded Corvash fleet, but thousands of refugee vessels fleeing the destroyed colonies. They came in everything that could fly, commercial transports packed to triple capacity, mining barges converted to passenger ships, even space station modules retrofitted with emergency engines. On the ground, something unexpected was happening. Dr. Layla Hassan stood at the window of the Global Defense Headquarters, watching as trucks rolled into the former auto plant across the street. Just 3 days ago, that facility had been manufacturing electric cars. Now it was being converted to produce power cells for military equipment. It's happening everywhere, said General Rodriguez, stepping up beside her. Every continent, every country, Layla nodded. I've never seen anything like it. Tokyo has converted their bullet train factories to produce hull plating. Nairobi's tech hub has shifted entirely to developing targeting systems. The initial wave of fear that swept the planet when news of the attack broke had transformed into something else, a grim, focused resolve that crossed all borders and cultures. The Russians have opened their missile defense plans to NATO, Rodriguez continued, scrolling through updates on his tablet. China and India are sharing satellite networks. Even North Korea has offered their full military cooperation. Outside the headquarters, civilians lined up around the block, not to evacuate or protest, but to volunteer. Some had technical skills. Others simply offered manual labor. No one was turned away. In orbit, the first refugee ships were being processed. Hana Park, who had escaped Titan colony with nothing but the clothes she wore, found herself assigned to a medical team almost immediately upon arrival. You have trauma experience? Asked the intake officer.